Our first guest on the Rise today is a decorated singer-songwriter based in Toronto. From an early age, he was drawn to the music of the past. While sifting through his dad's CD collection, he found the music of Louis Armstrong and piano players like Dr. John and Professor Longhair. And well, that was enough to spark Devin Cuddy's musical curiosity. He grew up surrounded by musical greats, one being his dad, Jim Cuddy, and the band Blue Rodeo. However, Devin's passion and drive sent him out into the world to cut his teeth at the Cameron House every Wednesday night, which led him to begin writing and releasing his own music. Years later, his newest release, called Dear Jane, is a fine collection of songs focusing on people's stories and about people from all walks of life and different eras in time. It's my pleasure to welcome Devin Cuddy to the show. Hey, Devin, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So you grew up surrounded by music, tons of music all the time. I'd love to hear about like the first song you wrote, or maybe like, can you tell me a little bit about your first band? What was that like?
Well, I started playing in like the symphonic band, which is sort of an orchestra type thing. I played trumpet when I was in school from grade 7 to grade 12. So that was my first organized musical experience. And it wasn't until after that, when I went to university for piano, that I started writing. And I don't remember the specific first song, but a lot of it was like blues. I was into blues piano and I'd write like,
Mm-hmm.
a few lines, a few blues lines, and, sing them over a pretty standard 12-bar blues. So I don't know if one of those took form enough to call my first song, but that was my first sort of foray into writing. And
Mm-hmm.
then I got into sort of like country music. Um, and that was when I started writing more kind of fully realized songs. And out of that sort of came our very first record.
Very cool. What is it about, I mean, I'm totally drawn to, the music of Dr. John and Professor Longhair, like musical heroes of mine. I'm also a piano player. And so I was like, oh, he plays piano. Like he's fronting a band playing the piano. Like I feel like that's getting more and more rare these days. What was it about the sound of these musicians that kind of led you to the piano?
Well, we were forced to take piano. So I started with the piano uh, under
Yeah.
that under that way, and I learned to love it, let's say, because
Yes. Yeah.
we had to, you got to learn the rudiments, you got to learn the basic stuff, and that is so boring when you're a kid. It's just terrible. But
Yeah.
I started to get into New Orleans music when I was a sort of early teen. I was also playing trumpet at the time, so the Louis Armstrong and stuff led me into that sort of New Orleans blues and sound. And
Mm-hmm.
then once I started learning on piano, you have this uh, heightened enjoyment of the music because you can do some of it, not all of it,
Yeah.
yourself. And then that's where I started writing blues lines and learning licks and stuff like that. So that was really how I was drawn into that. And I think one of the things that's really great about New Orleans music, or at least what I connected to, was there's this sort of imagery and scene and lifestyle that is sort of rolled up into it, and you can kind of close your eyes and see this image of that era and that city. Um, and so it was sort of a all multi-sensory experience for me, and I was very drawn into that.
Yeah, I love that. I've never thought of it that way, but it is quite potent. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, there's so much distilled in the sound and just the swagger of the city and the people. It's intoxicating, really.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
love that. So your album, Dear Jane, is debuting on our top 30 chart this week, which is super exciting. And, it marries the sort of classic Canadian rock sounds, but there is that New Orleans like swagger in there as well, which is super delightful. Um, what was it like putting the album together?
Well, first of all, I'm very thrilled to be on this list. CKUA is absolutely one of my favorite stations, and I've always listened
Aw,
to it,
thank you.
especially when we're in Alberta. We'd have it on the van all the time. So very, very honored. Uh, this record came together over quite a long period of time because I had a lot of these songs before the pandemic, and they were
Mm,
pretty much finished. And we were going to release a record that probably didn't look exactly like this, but something. when the pandemic hit, and I didn't want to put anything out during that time because I just felt
Yeah.
the way we do it and the level of the industry that we're in, we got to travel to take our record out there into the world to play shows and stuff. So I sat on it. So we added to it a little bit after, and we had stuff from a long time ago, and we tweaked some stuff in between. So it is a very different feeling than doing something that you put together as you package as a single piece. This feels
Yeah.
piecemeal a little bit, um, and also the songs are very familiar to me. Like it's new, this great feeling of newness when we put them out. But we've been playing some of those songs for a long time, so there was
Yeah.
I don't think relief is the right word, but a sort of a feeling of achievement to finally have it out and share it with the world.
Mm.
Um, but the record, therefore, is sort of a collection of stories and uh, different experiences that span a longer time than a record usually would for me, at least.
I would love to play the title track from the album. Um, what are some fun things or interesting things that you can share with our listeners about this song?
So I wrote this song during COVID, and during COVID, I realized, or during the pandemic or whatever, I realized that uh, I wasn't the type of person that could woodshed myself and lock myself in a room and have creation flow out of me. My influence comes from meeting people and experiences, and that's part of telling stories. I think for me, is sort of hearing stories, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not have a very productive time, uh, music wise or creatively. But this was one that came out of it. And so what I did was I watched a lot of television, and one of the shows that I watched during that time was MASH, and
Oh.
yeah, I zipped it like real fast. And one of the themes that kind of comes up in MASH infrequently, I guess, are Dear John and Dear Jane letters, which are letters from the home front written by the spouse who's at home to the spouse or service member who's on the front. And it's essentially a breakup letter saying that they won't be there when you get home. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
cheery number about that. Uh, so I wrote that about that. The song's supposed to be in the form of a letter. I chose the Dear Jane letter, so a man writing to a service member who's a woman. And yeah, that was kind of the one thing that I deemed passable that I created during the pandemic.
That
And
you
that turned out
chose
to
to
be
share with the world.
yeah. And then I sort of like the name for the name of the record, and I think that worked out too. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's super it's catchy. It's sort of like evocative. It's like, "Oh, Jane. Well, who's Jane?" You know,
yeah, yeah,
it got me asking questions like yeah, it's very
it's
cool.
good. That's
All
what
right.
that's what's supposed to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. By the Devin Cuddy Band. This is Dear Jane debuting at number 21 on this week's Top 30 chart.